Welcome to the Change in the Coalfield podcast. I am your host and CEO of Coalfield Development, Jacob Hanna. We've got a good inaugural episode of Season 5 for you folks today. I've not done an episode for Change in the Coalfields podcast ever since I became CEO. Because believe it or not, this job is very intricate. Takes a lot of time. And so now I've got my sea legs under me a bit to where I can carve out little moments to have wonderful conversations like what you're going to hear today with someone who I consider to be not only a mentor but a good friend, Brandon Dennison. He's the founder of Coalfield Development. The sign you see behind me was from the original building where it all started, which is where this interview is held, way out Wayne in West Virginia. I guess we dropped the from Coalfield Development. Now it's just Coalfield. Coalfield Development. Some folks just call it Coalfield, which causes a lot of confusion too. Anywho, crack open a cold Ale-8 for me. Pack your smoking pipes with hopium because it's going to be a good episode. Thanks. Enjoy. All right. Howdy, folks. My name is Jacob Hanna. I'm the CEO of Coalfield Development. And today I am with Brandon Dennison, and this is the first kickoff interview of the return of our podcast series, Change in the Coalfields, that Brandon had kicked off several years ago now, doing some excellent interviews with folks who are bringing about change in the coalfields. And so I wrote down some notes for myself to sort of commemorate this moment. 5 years ago, in January 2021, you interviewed me as conservation coordinator. We talked about solar, Scotland, history, culture, reclamation, and leadership. And fast forward to today, now I've been blessed with the opportunity to be in the role that you were in then and to carry that work forward. So today is really special to me because it's almost like picking up where we left off in that conversation. But so much has transpired since then. And it's continuing these conversations, but around a theme that I'm really, really excited that we're making a lot of new horizons around, called our Solutionist program. And for those who don't know, a Solutionist is, how I define a Solutionist is a community member that, if activated, then activates their community. So that's how, sort of shorthand, I'm defining Solutionist. And there's no better person to talk about Solutionists than, in my opinion, the original Solutionist of Coalfield Development, you, Brandon. And so today is to really kick off those conversations. There'll be the rest of our 10-ish Solutionists that you'll be hearing from. But today I'd love just to hear from you, Brandon, on what if you were a Solutionist in Coalfield's official Solutionist program, where are we sitting right now? Because usually when I talk with our Solutionists, and I want to go sit down with them on their sites. And so today,
sort of be in their space.
Yeah, today we're in a special space, even though it may look, for those who are watching, maybe not unique or special, but it has a lot of specialness to it. So where are we sitting, and how would you define Brandon Dennison's solution in the 2010-2011 era?
2010-2011. Well, first off, I'm so glad Change in the Coalfields is back. I think you and I just sort of intuitively know, one organization's not enough to do what needs to be done in Appalachia. And so weaving together networks of lots of leaders and organizations. I love the phrase solutionist. It's perfect. So I definitely see how Change in the Coalfields as a podcast and the Solutionist program complement one another. So that's very cool. I very much remember your podcast episode. It was one of my favorites. I remember you talking about you and your brother going to Scotland. And that sort of found its way into connections around conservation and what we're doing here at Coalfield Development. So it's cool to be on the other side of that now. We are in, we're out Wayne.
That's right.
We're in the town of Wayne, West Virginia. I think it's maybe 1,200, 1,300 people live within the town. It's the county seat of Wayne County, West Virginia. And this is Courtyard Apartments. And this was the original office of Coalfield Development. This corner was my desk for a very long time. This is the bathroom right here. And over time, we packed It never crossed my mind the safety
And exactly where my
violations.
mind went to, the fire code.
Never even like crossed my mind in those days. I mean, we had at one point we had like 10 people, stuck.
I remember.
And you like conference calls, you sort of like go take a walk around the neighborhood, get a little fresh air.
I would always feel bad for walking past you use the restroom because like he's on an important call.
Yeah,
If they hear a
it's like,
toilet
no,
flush,
no.
it's
You
like
this is just how it is. This is just how it is. A lot of creativity, just a lot of ground up work happened out of this space. Literally ground up. I say it was our first legit. Although I just described it in a way that did not sound at all legit. So the way Coalfield Development started, I grew up in Cabell County, just one county north. Family roots in West Virginia, Appalachia, way, way back. Wayne is one county south of Cabell County. And I was in graduate school at Indiana University. And I felt the hankering to get back home, like my grandpa always said, all good mountaineers come back home eventually. The mountains just pull you.
yeah.
And so my idea at Indiana was I wanted to learn how to run a nonprofit, and then I wanted to start a nonprofit in West Virginia to help. It's just a very, very vague. And I would say that if you want to be a solutionist and you're concerned your ideas are not refined or not thought out, just start somewhere and you'll be amazed how it'll go from there. And while I was in my first year of graduate school, the Housing Authority of Wayne County posted an internship, an affordable housing internship. And I thought, well, this is my chance to get back home. It's only one county away from where I grew up. And interestingly enough, the Housing Authority, it was a public entity to improve housing, and they were struggling to get resources. So Housing Authority sounds big and fancy. They only had eight units of housing in a county, population of 40,000 people. It had one part-time director. And this happens in rural all the time. Our capacity is very strained. And so the internship, the board wanted the intern to look at creating a nonprofit arm of the Housing Authority to go get more non-governmental funding sources. And I saw that as a great opportunity I was like, well, yeah, we can get housing resources, but we can also think about really being creative and innovative and changing the history of, when you're 24 years old, you have very grand visions. And so I took that whole summer as an intern and really just listened a lot. And really in the listening that I did, housing was a concern, but every single community meeting would circle back to jobs. And it'd be people literally crying of, Brandon, there's no way my daughter or my son is going to be able to stay in West Virginia because there's no opportunities for them. And in fact, as a parent, Brandon, I'm worried, this drug thing is getting out of control. I don't know if I want my grandkids to grow up here anymore.
What year was this? Do you remember?
This is summer 2010.
Okay.
So the organization was legally formed in 2010. Might have even been at the tippy end of 2009.
The opioid epidemic's just starting to
rise. And coal at 2010, coal was still pretty. 2000 to 2010 was a
fairly
pretty good
plateaued.
decade for coal.
Yeah.
And it's around 2014, 15 the bottom. So we'll get to that in a second. But really, that was a very long way of where's my head at 2010, 2011. It's really around generational poverty. So like all the listening I did deep into hills and hollers. I mean, seeing, in West Virginia, Wayne County, 30 minutes from Huntington, people still don't have running water in the places where they live. And really in my head starting to tie sort of economic development, environmental issues, job training, community infrastructure, all sort of falling under this umbrella of generational poverty. Deep, sticky challenges that our people face that we're going to take complex, creative solutions if we were actually going to get down to the roots of them. So summer of 2010, that's where my head's at, is what could we do that's different from what's already been tried that really could make a difference for these generational challenges that we're up against. I would say this wasn't technically our first, so next door is the Earlings General Store building. For an office, I dusted out a corner of that building, which had sat vacant for a while, but then it got broken into and all the copper got stripped out of it. So that didn't work. So then I went actually across the street the county commission gave me a corner of their office until about 2012. And my best friend from high school joined the effort, got our contractor's license, and we took out a loan and bought Courtyard Apartments, which is where we're sitting right now. And then one of our first projects was renovating these units for people to live in, and then Courtyard Unit 1 became the HQ.
And so, for context, why this unit looks like it's still got paint cans in it is because we had still been using this as sort of like an administrative space for a pretty good while until the last couple of years. But for reference, and I'll try and include some photos for folks who are interested of the finished units that are here in Courtyard.
Right. This is not what this is not the quality of our work.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But we realized, well, we don't, unit could be housing. We want to contribute to the housing. Yeah. You know, there's a shortage. So we wanted to make sure we're turning this into an actual rentable unit and not just extra office space that we may not need. So that's why it's under renovation, but it's got so much charm that we want to sort of capture that office space before it was fully renovated. Yeah.
It probably would not have been appropriate to do this in someone's bedroom. So it's probably good we got in here now before it turns back into a...
So when did you feel the solution evolved from a solution to a system? So you're sort of talking about this a little bit, where you're doing a lot of hearing and thinking, and here's the proposal, here's the hypothesis, and when does that start to become this self-actualizing system of Coalfield? When did that? It may not be as distinct as like a before and after point, but when did that start to change into something real?
I think the answer is roughly 2013. So I'll back into that. Summer of 2010, a lot of listening, a lot of grant writing. The 501c3 process, there's a whole actual national scandal around how you got 501c3s at that time. That's a rabbit hole, but it took us a long time just to get up off the ground. Then I went and finished graduate school, and I took the second year of grad school to do the grant writing and then the loan applications, which made us kind of more like a social enterprise. We wanted to not just get grants, but start businesses that could generate revenue and create jobs and not be totally dependent on the grants. And then, so the business plan, I took the second year of grad school, I switched over, I finished nonprofit, but then I went over into the business school and said, how can we make this financially sustainable? Was really the question on my mind. And I developed a project, or what'd you say, from system?
From solution to system.
So the initial solution was, all right, we're gonna build affordable housing. We're gonna make it energy efficient. We're gonna tear down abandoned housing, and we're gonna reuse, resell, recycle those materials. And we're gonna hire local young people who are unemployed to do it. And in addition to working for us, we're gonna enroll them in the community college so they can be on a career pathway to a really, not just get a job, but be on a career pathway for a good paying vocation. And I think where that project of sort of like on the job training for green housing, we'll call it. I think the initial idea was green collar jobs initiative. Yeah. That didn't go over super popular, so we scrapped that.
But should have called it Kelly Green.
You get the gist of the idea. Yeah, I should have. Marketing's never really been my strong suit. We hired our first crew in 2012. I mentioned Chase from high school joined us, got our contractor's license. First crew of 3 young men. One had just been laid off from the coal industry. One was exiting the foster care system and had a fast food job. And one was exiting the justice system. All 3 they were all under 22 years of age, already had kids, and some of them had more kids on the way. So as I'd done that listening and heard parents worry about their kids, this was that.
Yeah,
it fit it perfectly. And then as we hired these 3 young men, the work ethic was phenomenal. Like, they'd come early, they'd stay late. We knew the community college piece would be hard, and it was, but we were kind of prepared for that. We knew we'd have to drag them through a little bit, but the data showed that was in their long-term interest. What we underestimated was the life element. Stress at home, traumatic backgrounds, addiction, again, keeps coming up, homelessness, couch surfing, transportation. If an alternator goes bad and you live in Genoa, an hour south of here, that's an economic calamity for a family. and just life skills, communicating and being on a team. Those were the things that were getting in the way of success. It wasn't the work ethic. School was hard, but we kind of had a support system for that. But we had to figure out this human element. And so we developed what we called our 33, 6, and 3 model. 33 hours of paid work each week. So it's a real job, which was the key hook. 6 hours of higher education. So we're advancing those career pathways. But then 3 hours of what we call personal development, which is really just looking at how is life going? What are the barriers to a good quality of life? How can we develop networks and support systems to overcome those barriers and to grow not just as workers, but as people? And that 33, 6, and 3 model,
that's the system.
That's a system.
Mm-hmm. That's the system. And that's a couple years into that system, 2018 is when I found Coalfield. And just that, you can have an amazing system, but if it doesn't translate, it's sort of, I don't know, pedantic. It sort of talks over you. And not only was this a system that was applicable, like I said, it's translatable. So I knew when I saw Coalfield, is immediately a resonance of, oh wow, okay, I got it, I want it, I want to be in
Connected.
it. Yeah, and so that's what really that human piece. Everything else is amazing, but the fact that it centers back to human, I think is just an incredibly powerful thing that keeps it to that original solution of like, okay, I'm hearing these things, I'm hearing the need and the opportunity, and that's where well, I'll get sort of to like what motivates through the hardship, but I feel like that's a lot of it is that human piece.
Absolutely.
Side note, I remember driving into this space. What you don't see is more of a room and more desks, and it just, I don't know. I think folks, they see the Coalfield of today and they think, yeah, you're doing a lot because there is a lot there. You have West Edge. Folks always know West Edge, and West Edge is awesome. But I hope for folks who are listening who are either solutionists or thinking about being solutionists, or just folks who are just doers in their community, that we got a lot done in just this little space here. And I think there's just I don't know. I don't want to say like there's a holiness to this little space here, but there's a reason why we're sitting here, because you don't. A little bit can go a long way. Is what I'm trying to say.
I'm a little bit overwhelmed sitting, to be totally honest with you, thinking about all the creativity and all the persistence and all the hard conversations. Before 33, 6, and 3, before we had I don't know, we call it our navigators.
Oh yeah.
Chase and I would bring one-on-one
Yeah.
into this office and just go deep. Like, what is happening in your life?
Yeah.
How can we provide support?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? We weren't trained for that.
Yeah.
But our heart was good, and that made up for the lack of training. But yeah, it's true. I mean, and the reason I started in 2010, and we hired our first crew in 2012. The reason for the time gap is we had no money to do anything. I mean, my parents taught at Marshall. I was middle class, not wealthy by any means. And so, we had to go find it, and we took out loans. We took out big risks to pull it off. But our budget, I remember our first board meeting, our budget was $210 because Larry Castle, our board chair, made a $200 donation to at least be able to open the damn bank account. I was a graduate student. I mean, my student loans were bigger than the overall value of Coalfield development.
Wow.
For the first 4 or 5 years of its history, I would say. So it is a more of a grassroots story than people often realize.
That's really what I was trying to pull out there, is that I think folks see the outcome of 15-ish years of development, but it's got a very, anyone can have the same entry point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about systems a little bit. You shared with me once a really cool opportunity with an organization called the Ashoka Foundation, and they talk about a lot of different things, but the thing that I really took away from that collaboration was their conversation around systems change. And so hearing this system that you are describing and the system of Coalfield now that's been built to what it is, I'm going to probably butcher their philosophy, but what I took away from their way of seeing systems change is how you change an entire system, an ecosystem, is not just your solution get bigger. It's the system changes through you, beyond you, even despite you. It is bigger, and it has to be bigger than you. It has to go around you and above you and beyond you. And so that really, for someone who grew up, like a lot of people in Appalachia, with maybe an anxiousness to let go of control because so many things are out of control around you, it's a fascinating concept that as you get bigger and better at what you do, it's important that you let go of it more and more and let an ecosystem evolve beyond your walls. And so you've really adopted that. You've built entire coalitions across the state, and you've been a part of coalitions that are multi-state throughout Appalachia. And now you are, in my mind, sort of like taking this solutionist concept of systems change to this next opportunity at Marshall. And so what would you say, how would you define the solution in that iteration moving forward, and how much of it is a continuation of that original solution evolution for scale?
That's a great question. It's a great question, and it's going to get at the evolution of the organization, I would say. I only display 3 awards in my office. I am really proud of my degrees, but I grew up in a family of higher education. So degrees were not optional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're kind of like a birth certificate, like you're just going to have that. The first is, and one of them's at my Ashoka fellowship. So when I was in graduate school, I learned about this fellowship for social entrepreneurs. And I'd never heard the phrase social entrepreneurs. And I was like, well, what is a social entrepreneur? And the more I learned, it just ignited something in my soul. Because as I was listening throughout the hills and hollers in that summer of 2010, I was also a history grad or history student in undergrad. And so I understood that, there's this cynicism and fatalism that has kind of built up in Appalachia. And you don't want to fuel a stereotype, but also stereotypes come from somewhere.
Sure.
And a lot of that was broken promises, and a lot of that was broken systems and failed systems, or outright corrupt and terrible systems. And our history teaches that, which is part of why it matters to know our history. So when I had the opportunity to become an Ashoka Fellow, that was really special. Just briefly, if you edit this out, it's okay. But now I'm thinking about my office.
Nothing gets edited.
The second award was, we got a big EPA grant, sort of 2015. It was one of our first big federal grants. And to draw down the money, we were a low capacity organization. So they made me go through this grant administration training online. And it was just the most mind-numbing. I mean, it just insulted my being. You know what I mean? It was just
Federal
boring.
online training?
Yeah,
Stimulating?
and it just went on and on and on. And so finally at the end, they sent you a PDF certificate, and it's like black and white and has an eagle on it. It's like EPA grant administration training, and you print it out and you sign for yourself, So A, just the silliness, and B, just we're passionate about our work, but sometimes there is just BS that you just gotta keep. You can complain about it, or you can sort of have fun with it. And you just do it because at the end of the day, that grant's going to benefit these people we just hired in these communities we're serving. And then the third is a Most Improved Award. I very, very rarely. I was talking to my 9-year-old about this.
He's already 9.
He's 9.
Wow, jeez, Louise.
Yeah, and of course I met my wife through this organization,
right.
and we raised our family. But I don't think I've ever actually won a best in. Best in this or best in that. But I won a slew of participation and most improved, and just willing to try again, iterate, improve, and keep at it. So anyways, those are 3 things that are important to me. Systems change. I think Coalfield's relevant to a couple different systems. And I think we're unique in that I don't think, maybe one day we'd be a think tank. or a policy advocacy organization. I doubt it, because I think our magic comes from how real our work is, how tangible it is. Like,
Yeah.
this is a construction site,
Yeah.
you know, like
We're sitting on paint cans right now.
someone
Yes.
will live here.
Yes.
This is a building that was empty, and now there's a business here.
Yeah.
That's a roof that has this is the first solar system
Yeah.
in the town of Wayne.
Yeah.
The conversations, people driving by like, well, like,
Sure.
what's going on here? It sparks a new way
Yeah.
of,
Sure.
of thinking. But then if all we ever do is keep that magic internal to this one little organization, we're limiting the change we can achieve. And so systems change for me is sort of taking what you learn on the ground and then applying that to improve those messed up systems that have created a lot of the conditions we have in the first place, and that this organization exists to try and overcome. So what systems is our work relevant to? Workforce development, for sure. And I think we've achieved a lot here to where we have this 33-6-3 model. There's different iterations of that now, by the way. But that core of on-the-job paid with these personal supports wrapped around, people at regional, state, federal, even international have taken note. You and I have taken a group to tour our project sites from the World Bank, China, Brazil, like 4 or 5 different countries saying, how are you doing this? We want to do this in our coal community overseas. Also in economic development. I think a lot of economic development in this country is predicated on having an existing economy that's already functioning. And a lot of our communities don't have that.
That's a really good
lot of
point.
our communities were built to do one thing. And when that one thing goes away,
the community goes away.
it just feels like a crumbling around us. So how are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to go get tax credits for new industrial development when all of your industrial development is now going away, and sometimes intentionally so, depending on the different policies that we've had over time? And so, honoring this grassroots approach, how can social enterprises be a part of the economic development strategy? Shouldn't economic diversification be a part of the economic development strategy in the Appalachian region, given all the extraction that we've had for so many generations?
What Coalfield system and the system change that happens there, I think it could be really, I know for myself in this role right now, really tempting to just continue to build that system and iterate. But Brandon, made an intentional decision to not completely leave that system, but instead to try and bridge it to other systems at Marshall and at coalition level. So what spurred that next iteration of that systems change and that solution?
I think one of the main things that takes good work and messes it up in Appalachia is politics. And I don't just mean D and R, D versus R, political parties. I mean the way when we live in resource-constrained places, it's hard not to get a resource-constrained mindset where it's like, if that group gets something, then my group is losing something. And I really wanted to somehow help shift that mentality and say that, look, we're small communities. Like, the only way we're going to be better off long term is if we truly go in and do things together. And that feels scary at first, but that means sharing stuff, sharing information, sharing resources, sharing money and funding. So even before we were a big $20 million organization, we did intentionally do 2 things. One, coalition building. And we can talk about some of the different coalitions we've been a part of, but Act Now would be the biggest example. And 2 is we started doing sub-grants. We would get a big grant, and then we would sub-grant it 4 or 5 different other organizations.
Because you remembered how tough it was to get
exactly right
EDA training as a low-capacity organization.
Exactly right.
You're taking on that burden now of helping others ease
So
into
we need
that.
this network of, now we call them Solutionists, which I'm just going to adopt. I love it. We need this network of Solutionists, and we need to accelerate the good work on the ground. And so for me, it just felt like it was the next part of how we achieved
Yeah.
our mission as an
Yeah.
organization.
Which is a different kind of challenge because it's less control. It's
Yep,
less
you're letting go.
centralization. And that's tough. That's
Mm-hmm.
tough in a place that has historically been an extraction zone where, it's easy to, I don't know, justify looking after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I would think out of any region that feels like it's okay to like just be self-centered because it's a survival mechanism, I understand it. And so what did that take from you as a solutionist to sort of see the solution? You've got a system at Coalfield, you've got a system of coalitions, you're now bridging this role into Marshall to bring into those systems. What carried over from Coalfield into that world, and what were completely new skill sets and functions that you had to adopt to really build a system of systems?
I do love speed. I think part of this organization's success has been our willingness to take risks and to move quick, even when we didn't have it all figured out. And I don't want to say coalitions, I think you have to keep that love for speed. But once you're outside your one organization where you do have a lot of control, you have to be willing to make space for trust building, for conversations, for hard conversations, for sharing, sharing of data, sharing good news, sharing bad news.
Sure.
And so the word weaver comes up. I think, a lot of people try to run a network like an organization with an org chart and everything.
Yeah.
And it's a mistake right off the bat because a network is not an organization. It's different. And so it's more about weaving different interests, different resources together, not trying to change one thread to be something that it's not, but just trying to get it to sync up with the other threads that might be a little bit different. So that has, I wouldn't say I've figured this out at all. I mean, those are different skills.
Facilitation.
Yeah, facilitation. A lot of patience.
You talked about, there's so many, I have a few sub thoughts and then I'll get to my actual question. You talked about policy a little bit. I think I see Coalfield with policy is, I've always seen this as like the proof of policy. Whenever we get involved, there's a lot we could try to do with policy around solar, but instead I find we're most effective of proving the concept that then complements the policy. Because you can talk all day about how something's good or how it can be beneficial, but until you actually see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, see the benefit of it, and realize it, then it's just politics then at that point. And we've, there's just a lot, everyone else is doing that. That's fine. I don't want to duplicate that. So I find that we strike a really underserved need there in terms of just the proof of policy.
Yeah.
I think we do that with reclamation. I think we do that with workforce. I think we do that with a lot of our work that then supports or influences bigger policies. You talked about needing to know our history and just sort of understand our history. You're working at part of your role is at Coalfield, part of your role is at a higher ed institution now. History was not only a part of your education, so you studied history, I believe, but also part of your interests. I think you shared with me once you watched the TV show The Last Kingdom.
Yeah.
So you have
I love history.
You have a passion for history, and so how has that history served your work? That love for history. I think a lot of folks will say, "Well, I studied English literature, and so therefore I'm probably not well positioned to start a nonprofit, or I studied nursing, therefore I'm probably not well positioned to do workforce." So how did studying history find its way back around to serving, building all of this?
Well, you mentioned workforce, you mentioned reclamation. We've done a lot in agriculture and in energy sectors. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on different policies where we've showed up.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not the organizer, but we're a
Sure.
significant contributor. One where history comes in that I think is uniquely applicable is place-based economic development, which to you and me sounds obvious, but it's actually a fairly recent development. So the idea is that different places in the country have very different realities and need different kinds of interventions from the top and need different capacities from the bottom. And those two things need to come together in a place to have positive changes. that sounds obvious, but a lot of times a national new program, Congress passes a law, president signs it, an agency implements it, and it's just one set of rules for the whole country. And that's not really fair, because if you're a big population with a big economy, you're probably going to be better positioned than a more rural place with a struggling economy and less capacity. And so targeting policies depending on what makes a place distinctive is important for better results, more fair outcomes. But if you don't understand the history of the place where you're designing a policy, you're probably starting off from a shaky foundation right out the gate. And so understanding an Appalachia extraction, understanding some of the political corruption, frankly, that we've dealt with, at a federal level, a lot of times they say, well, we want to get the money to the ground, meaning we want it to make a difference in people's lives. And then to get the money to the ground, they send it to the state government.
Sure.
And the reality is, that doesn't necessarily get the money actually out onto the ground where it affects people's lives every single time. But if you've never been to West Virginia, you might not understand that.
And I think there's sort of the capital H history of like the technical scholastic history. And then there's what you were doing at the beginning of this conversation, which is asking the community, what is your history? What are your needs? What are, like, oh, well, we're worried that we don't have jobs. We're worried about this happening. It's not how it used to be. Well, how did it used to be? What did that look like? What are we wanting to pull into the future? And so there's sort of like a lowercase h history of just listening at the local level and hearing what are the interpretations on the ground of the history. And I think you don't have to be, a multi-generational West Virginian to understand the history and really have an empathetic approach.
I love that. And taking the judgment out
Yes.
of, we didn't get in the situations we're in
Yeah.
because we just woke up and said, oh, I would love to grow up in generational poverty. It's taking the judgment out and really understanding what makes a place be how it is, what shapes a culture.
Yeah.
And then not really starting from a place of, okay, I'm going to change that, but more like I'm going to understand that and show up and be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I am going to try and make positive changes, but in a way that honors what's unique about a place and its people.
Yeah.
And as a history major, at Marshall now, a lot of my work is in like non-traditional micro-credentials, workforce development, manufacturing. And a lot of people assume I'm going to like criticize history majors or English majors, but not at all. I think you're learning, you're gathering knowledge, but more than that, you're learning how to think critically. You're learning how to weigh different perspectives. Yeah. You're learning how to not just take everything you hear the first time as fact, but to really research something and understand the context. My boss now, President Smith, always says context before content. Yeah. In other words, the smartest content in the world doesn't matter if it's not accounting for the context all around it.
Love that. Speaking of history and content and context, we're having this conversation right now after what has probably been one of the hardest years for organizations like our own, other nonprofits, communities, state level, local level, federal level. It's just been a lot of change and a lot of challenge. And thinking about history, a touch point I go back to often in this organization is when we navigated COVID. And that was a really, really difficult period where we all took, a pay cut temporarily to get through the cash flow of it all. Yep. And so hearing how history can help us understand the context of things, how did the history of things like COVID, the history of things just like the challenges of Appalachia help us navigate the challenges of the moment we're in right now that we're facing with all the changes in the federal funding and all the changes on the ground? How can we take what we've learned and apply it to figuring out, well, yeah, we've survived this. What does it mean to survive that?
And we're living history now,
Yes.
right? That's our context.
That's right. Yeah,
we can't forget that. Yeah. And it is interesting how our organization sort of weaves in and out of history. Even our 501c3 letter, there's a big national controversy that was saying the Obama administration was overly controlling who could and could not get 501c3 for political reasons. And the federal agent at the heart of that was Lois Lerner, I believe was her name. And if you look at our 501c3 letter that did finally get approved after like 14 months, she's who signed it.
Wow.
Our advocate to help get through that process was Senator Byrd, who passed away
Wow,
right
yeah.
in the middle of that.
Wow.
And so everything slowed down when we kind of lost that congressional advocate. COVID, and then the history. So like 2014, 15, we didn't, we were aware of coal because we're in coal. Coal was the biggest private employer in the county when we started. In Wayne County, there are 3 active coal mines. By 2015, all 3 had shut down. And so we didn't necessarily set out to be a just transition organization, but the community we were serving was hurting really bad and searching for solutions. And we were one of the few groups around that wasn't just, in a bad mood about all the changes around us, but we had some positive vision to become a part of and buy into. And that's when we really started to grow. Folks said, who has a solution in the Coalfields? And that was us. But that was tied to the history happening all around us. COVID was a dark time. The money part was tough, but the harder part, we had a crew member overdose and pass away on the job site from fentanyl. We had a crew on the west side of Charleston, which is majority minority census tract, and we had a young man die from gun violence in that same year. And so I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we hear about fentanyl and drugs and COVID and loneliness and isolation. And then this was during the time of George Floyd and a racial reckoning. And it felt like we were very much in the middle of that context and experiencing that. And it, there's a few moments in our history where it felt like it really did not feel like we were going to make it. And as the CEOs, there's a balance of course, you're transparent, but you don't ever want to be dramatic either. And so you try and be precise and concise with what you share with the organization. But COVID was one of those. I mean, the money for an organization of our size got really, really low. And then to have to call a parent of a crew member who's just passed away, it just, you're not sure you're going to make it. The other point would have been, I'd say about 2013, I ran a payroll and we overdrafted the bank account. So we had negative money in the bank account. And, but just somehow it keeps, we're very blessed, honestly. It's hard to chalk it up to much else.
So how do you not let that turn into callousness? I think a lot of folks would listen to that and say like, wow, well, the ecosystem for nonprofits is obviously just not hospitable in Appalachia. And so I'm going to do something else somewhere else. How do you turn that for 2025 and 2026, very difficult years that we're in right now, that a lot of folks are feeling a lack of hope and a lack of opportunity and a lack of a reason why we should turn all this frustration into something solution-oriented or positive. How do you transform that?
It's as scary as it was to overdraft the bank account. There was like 7 people, and so that would have been terrible. And think of all that wouldn't have happened. But the scale now, when the organization lost 14 grants, is that right? In the
14
last
federal
year.
grants in last year.
For the scale of lives that we're a part of now, I think this easily had to be one of the toughest years, in the history of the organization. I commend you for, a steady hand and also for staying positive. I think how to stay positive, there was an old time organizer who was more from like an advocacy viewpoint that I met early in my career. And she said, I just have to warn you, honey, in the end, Appalachia will always defeat you.
Gosh, man alive. That's literally the motto for Appalachian fatalism.
Yeah. From someone who's supposed to be part of the solutions. And the way I've wrestled with that statement, it can be a hard reality here. Let's not sugarcoat it. But I think for me, if your goal is to change Appalachia in a whole different place, you probably will be defeated. But I don't think that's the right goal.
Yeah.
And it's a much more humble goal of not saying all us people are broken and until we're all fixed and better, I'm a failure. It's being a part of a community. It's being a part of a place and a culture. And it is not so much making change as kind of shaping change over time.
Yeah.
And supporting people so they can figure out their own change for themselves. It's taking the judgment out of it, taking the expectation out of it. I think as kind of do-gooders, sometimes we think we're owed these miraculous results because we're working so hard. But we're not owed anything. And our challenges as an organization are never as hard as an unemployed person's challenge to put food on the table, or a person in recovery to stay clean, or a person who's been wounded to keep trying. Those are the real challenges, and it's that we just have to keep perspective, stay humble.
I think that that really gets to what I've been wrestling with the word hope on. So I'm honored to Thursday drive up to Morgantown to receive this award from the Alliance for Hope, I think is what they're called. It's called the Sunshine Award.
Speaking of hope.
Yeah, it's hope. It's like, okay, cool. I'm receiving an award on hope. That's cool. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going through a very shitty time.
not feeling sun rays.
I'm not exactly exuding positivity here.
That's funny.
But it made me wrestle with the idea of hope. I think there's maybe two different kinds of hope. There's sort of like the when the things are going well, it's sort of like this positive hope. And then when things are going bad, there's this dogged hope. There's positive hope and dogged hope. And I think for me, the dogged hope it means that hope is not just the outcome of positive forces, but instead it's the daily indomitable efforts to thwart negative forces. And the emphasis on the daily, because it's not going to be like, okay, this big, massive negative thing happened to Appalachia. Here's our big, counteroffensive. Like, no, it's the day, just waking up and doing the thing, and still answering the email, and still showing up for someone because someone in recovery is showing up. Someone who's trying to expunge a record is showing up. If they can do it, by Jove, I can do it. So I think this season is really making me trying to understand what it means to find hope, to embody hope, to look for hope. And so I think you really impact it well.
I like your definition. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
In fact, our original value statement had dogged.
Oh, really?
The first value was no complaining or whining.
That's right. Yeah.
And because we could
sure.
take the whole podcast and tell you, you know what I mean?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
But another one is doggedly pursue solutions.
That's right.
To problems.
Yeah.
And then to balance out no complaining or whining, we said take time to listen to one another.
Yeah.
So it's not saying don't tell me if there's a problem, but it's just saying let's quickly pivot into action once we've identified.
And for context for folks, we've had a lot of those values listed over the years, and how they all sort of neatly summarize is gumption, grit, and grace.
Which is a beautiful, concise summary. But that doggedness word connects.
I like the word dog. It's just something, I don't know, like the word dog's in there.
Yeah.
Your
definition of
attack it.
Of hope is gritty.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
I like it.
So just sort of spending more time here on just the moment that we're in, and looking at 2025. Probably close to a dozen other major nonprofit leaders or solutionists in the region transition from their roles for a myriad of different reasons. Some of it, loss of federal funding. Some of it, just entirely shifted new ecosystems and markets and landscapes, etc. And so here in the context of all the challenges we discussed, and hearing this sort of massive leadership transition in the last 12 to 18 months, is it harder to be a solutionist today, or is the landscape demanding a new type of solution?
I don't think. Is it harder to be a solutionist today? It's a history question. I think there's a lot of opportunities to be a solutionist. I think it's just different. I think something I do worry about is that K-shaped recovery. If you've heard this, where sort of economically folks at the top just keep getting stronger, 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 and then folks at the bottom sort of get worse, 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 and we're losing that sort of middle. So in some regards, I'm sure that it's harder. But in other ways, so Coalfield Development was started during the Great Recession. It was the biggest economic recession since the Great Depression of the 30s. And so it's usually true in the times of the greatest struggle is when sort of the iron is sharpening the iron and the really strong solutions can emerge. And so in many ways, I would say maybe the answer is yes, it's harder, but that's a blessing because it'll refine the solutions of this era to be really, really good ones.
Love that. That's a good answer. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think too, it's almost a trick question I'm giving you because I do think I remember seeing just incredible, this is not to pick on you at all, but you're a young man and your hair turned gray, trying to pull down all of the opportunities that were abundant at the time. And so I think hardness, difficulty it's whether there's money, whether there's shortage of money, whether there's opportunity or shortage of opportunity, it's hard either way. It's difficult either way.
Like if in 2010, we got a $500,000 grant to just get up and go, we would have missed out on some major learning opportunities. And some opportunities to refine and to iterate. So you make an interesting point that, abundance has its challenges too.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of stress in a lot of organizations, ours included, in what it means to tackle abundance. I don't think the work that we're focusing on and the regions that we're focusing on are not accustomed to abundance.
I literally did not have a gray hair on my head before Act Now. That's a factually true statement.
I was trying to be delicate about it, Brandon.
It's a fact.
I'm getting my own right here. Yeah, rite of passage. Okay. Why is it so important for a solution to be doing instead of just being? And to take it further, how does patient speed balance those things?
Doing instead of being.
Yep. So there's no shortage of organizations that say, we're an organization that stands and represents for change or for workforce, or we want this. But not every organization is a doing organization. And so not to say one is right or wrong, but why is it important for Coalfield to lean more towards the doing and balancing the being and using patient speed to oscillate between the two?
Tangibles, I probably overuse it, but it's such a critical word for me because I think in Appalachia, folks have had so many broken promises, and that's where a lot of that cynicism builds up. And the only way to overcome it is through follow through and keeping our promises and showing very tangibly that person who's unemployed, your neighbor, your cousin, now has this job and they're excited about it. That building that was empty, now it's full and vibrant and it's contributing to the economy again. That mine site that was sitting just doing nothing like a moonscape is now a vibrant farm that's contributing economically and ecologically. And it's just the tangibility is how you can start new conversations and start to change a mindset about what's possible. Patient speed is that we invented that term as an organization over time. And where that came from was, on the one hand, we're clearly an action-oriented group. And yet we would get a little demoralized because for all the action and all the activity, we would look around and the unemployment rate only went up, or the labor force participation rate only went down, or the poverty rate held steady or even inched up, and the population kept declining. It's felt like we were just drops in the bucket. And so patient speed comes from, for the patient's part, these are generational challenges that we've chosen to take on. So it would just be pure hubris and arrogance to feel like we are owed a generational turnaround in a 2-3 year grant period cycle. That's just not how that's going to go. And we can complain about that, or we can just understand our history and live into our current version of the history the best we can. But that doesn't mean we should be lazy.
Sure.
Right? If there is good work that we can do, if there's a job we can create, a building we can revitalize, a mine site we can reclaim, we should move very quickly to do it as fast as possible, because we're trying to spark this network, this ecosystem of entrepreneurs and leaders and solutionists and organizations and businesses that can build a better economy from the ground up. And there's no time to waste.
Yeah.
So it's this balance of don't waste a minute, stay action oriented, but also stay humble that, the big changes we see on the horizon are not just going to come about overnight.
Yeah.
And we don't have the luxury of getting cynical or jaded or negative about it.
And I think that's
Where do we find our hope?
yeah.
Back to hope.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
don't tell me you're feeling hopeless, because the whole economy hasn't transformed in your grant cycle. When, we have people living without running water who, it's perspective.
Yes, perspective. And then also just, we have to find a way to control the controllables. And I think a lot of times the world feels like it's just doing its own thing and we're lost in the tidal wave of it. But I think there are things that we can navigate and be agents of. And I think when I was thinking about starting my own nonprofit before I found Coalfield, you always start with the big vision. Like, what's my vision statement? What am I trying to solve? What am I going to tackle? And I think it can be very scary to think that big in a season like this, where it's like, well, yeah, but what if I write a vision statement about this and then the government changes and it's no longer, relevant, or it's different? And I think it's there's something about just doing it. Just going into it and not waiting for the perfect function or the perfect philosophy, the perfect structure. I think there's a Goldilocks zone where you don't want to be haphazard and irresponsible.
Right.
But I think if you can control the controllables and utilize that in a way that has good beneficial impact and outcomes, then that starts to lead to a more perfect system. It leads to a better outcome, leads to more capacity to where then you can start to shape the narrative and shape the direction of a region. And so I'm partly talking to myself, but also talking to maybe someone who might be listening, wondering about starting their own solution. Like, is this just a bad year? I hear it sounds like a bad year for nonprofits, is what someone could conclude. And it's a fair conclusion. But I think the motto I like to live by as someone who grew up in a town of 84 people, this is Outwayne we're in right now. I grew up way Outwayne. There was only one gas station, no grocery stores, dirt road on top of a hill with no running water. And you could say that place is not a good place to live. But in my mind, and this is something my mom and dad helped shape in me, is they'd always point to an empty building and say, oh, if someone had just a few bucks, they can make that a hot dog stand. Or, you could, this trail rider's coming through here. Why doesn't someone just have like just a little air pump station to fill up their tires, And it's shaped a motto in my mind of opportunity is in fact in greatest supply where you think there is none. Yeah. That's where real opportunity is at. And so I just want to challenge the narrative that we might be feeling right now, that like now's not the time to do big plays or big moves, but I think it is. I think it always is.
I think now's the exact time.
Yeah.
I mean, so when I was 24 or something like that, started Coalfield Development, my grand vision was ending generational poverty in Appalachia. And part of me is like, well, that's ridiculous. But part of me, I don't think I would change that if I went back.
Oh, yeah.
And that has remained, the vocabulary shifts and you learn more and you iterate on it, and some things work better than others. But at the end of the day, that is my prayer.
Yeah.
For Central Appalachia. And that is what my work at Coalfield is about. My work at Marshall is about. And somebody could say, well, you haven't ended generational poverty, so aren't you discouraged? But the reality is, like, I've seen that vision become reality like thousands of times. We've seen people come to Coalfield Development, literally homeless, not that long into their recovery, no significant job experience to speak of. They go on to become first their family to become a college graduate. They go on to get journey level, carpenter's level work, good paid, good benefits. They get their kids back. They lost them. They get them back. They're raising a family. that is a generational
Yeah.
poverty cycle that has reversed itself.
That's right.
And if we can share what we've learned and other organizations can reverse that cycle, then we are a part of something that is working.
Yeah, love that. And I think if you had to set your sight lower than eradicating generational poverty in Appalachia, imagine how low of a horizon you would have ended up in 15 years.
I think that's right. So I don't think I would have changed
journey.
it.
Yeah.
If we just said, I'm going to develop 50 units of affordable housing, noble goal, but just not
Yeah.
getting at the root of
Yeah. Agreed.
the situation.
Yeah. Why out Wayne? I think it can be easy for folks to choose the known over the need. And your known was Campbell County, but you chose the need of Wayne County. And so, why?
That's less scientific, to be honest.
Yeah.
That internship popped up,
Yeah.
and it was semi-close to home, so
Yeah.
I jumped on it.
But I think folks could have. I was in AmeriCorps in Maryland. Served that community, started a food pantry, and wanted to come back home and serve
it
West
back home,
Virginia.
yeah.
And so, why not start this somewhere easier like Campbell County?
Yeah, Campbell County's got more resources. Probably could have had a bigger donor base faster. The truth is, I fell in love with the people here. When I did all that listening, for me, I'm a relationships driven. I couldn't just unhear all that. And I found a group there were other people here that were really working hard. We were a hubcap community, the West Virginia Community Development Hub.
Yeah.
I was on the hubcap team.
That's cool.
And so I formed genuine relationships that I didn't want to give up on. And then I found 2.5 acres on the creek on Left Fork and Miller's Fork, and it was my home for about a decade.
Yeah. What best memories here in Wayne? Could be in this building, in the community. Some of your best memories.
Hiring the first crew was such an affirmation because I talked a little bit about the cynicism. And a lot of people said when they heard my ideas for this job training program, they said, well, you're not going to find young people that want to work anymore. All that's left is pillbillies. A person from Wayne County said that straight to my face.
Pillbillies, yeah.
And so when we finally got enough money to hire first crew, we had like 30 plus applicants. So that affirmed there were young people that wanted to work. And then we gathered right in the living room there, our first day of orientation. We hired a first crew of 3, but only 2 showed up. And I was so pissed off. I mean, all the work for 2 years that we'd put into this place, all the sacrifices, all the things that we'd persisted through. And we were finally to day 1, and right at day 1, and I just hear that contractor in the back of my mind. You're not going to find anybody who wants to work. It's just pillbillies. So we get started with the orientation and the paperwork. And about 30 minutes in, I hear screeching tires. It was gravel parking lot at the time. Josh comes in, big guy, swings the door open. He's like sweating. His voice is shaking. And I go up to him to basically tell him, like, turn it back around. Like, we're going to be on time. We're going to be committed. This is not a handout. we're going to work and learn together. If you don't want to be a part of that, I have my big businessman pep talk in mind. He stops. He says, Brandon, I'm so sorry. My daughter was born last night. Wow. She came way early. I don't remember the weeks, but she was in the NICU, basically like barely alive. And he just started bawling. He said, you have no idea how bad I need this opportunity. And he was right. I hadn't experienced anything like that. So that changed the conversation, very quickly. And then that crew was an up and down journey, to say the least. But another happy memory was their graduation, where 2 of the 3 made it, became first in their family to become a college graduate. Just seeing them go across that stage was phenomenal. But the best part was afterwards, they had their daughters with them, and they were playing with the cap and gown. And when we say a generational poverty cycle reversing itself, that's what it looks like.
There's a photo of that. I'll try and include that as well. Some of your worst memories here.
Well, we had to fire one of that original 3. This all happened in this office. And it was very much tied to addiction, but also just the human piece of trying to become who we need to become. It was the right decision. I still believe that today, but it was so hard, again, feeling like what we'd built was falling apart. We had these values, and of course, no complaining and whining, and then the other one is trust and relationships are top priority. So I pulled the whole crew together because the crew member who had committed the offense was also trying to pull the rest of the crew down. Whether he knew that or not, I don't know. And I took the values which we had all signed during that orientation, and I said, what you all have done is to break the trust in this organization. I was trying to make a point. I was just feeling very emotional. And I shattered the frame on the ground. And as I did it, I caught my thumb and literally like blood like splattered the wall. I know this sounds very over the top as I'm sharing this right now. And then we pulled in the two others. They went on probation. And then the third, who was one I felt we'd really formed a bond. And we'd come a long way, but we couldn't get there. And I said, we're going to have to terminate your contract. And he went straight for the jugular of, what kind of a mentor are you? And you're out here breaking stuff, which I was. It wasn't very good mentorship. And slammed the door, punched the wall, peeled out the same parking lot Josh had peeled into. And it just felt like we were hitting our limitations, like how much change really is possible.
Yeah.
And it felt like a reminder of that. And I don't think I handled it the best, but I do think it was the right decision. But then I'll end with, he came back. This crewmate came back maybe a month or so later, and it was late, and I was working alone. And honestly, at first I felt a little unsafe because he left not on good terms. And so I made a pot of coffee. We sat outside. He smoked a cigarette. I had quit I had actually had a stressed out smoking phase in the Coalfield story. And
I'm sure I'll hit mine soon.
It became, don't do that. Find better outlets. It was the most heartfelt conversation I've ever had, where we just connected as human beings. And we talked about how the lies we tell, and it wasn't a judgmental, how lies we tell in our lives turn into these webs, and we get stuck in these webs, and then we can't get out of them. And it has to start, whatever better is, has to start with just telling the truth to ourselves, those around us. And at the end of that, he said, so can I have my job back? I said, no, I'm sorry. Because we had been through multiple second, third, fourth, fifth.
Sure.
And I said, but here's everything I'm going to do to help line up other resources for you. And maybe in a year, maybe you can. But as of right now, the two crew members who are left are doing so much better since we made this decision. I can't let them be pulled down again.
Sure.
And it was real. It was tough. It was honest. But it was right. And so a lot of ups and downs in this office.
I've had to go through a couple of those myself.
I know you have.
Things that carry forward from here to your work now at Marshall, Coalitions in Appalachia.
I'm super excited. I got to find a bathroom and come back.
That one's torn out.
I know it is.
You're going to have to pee in a can.
I'll go outside or something. Yeah, I'm very sorry.
Oh, good. Pause real quick.
I've been holding it. I might try Erling's.
Yeah.
Are they up there?
It looked closed, but you can try the bank.
Okay.
We'll be back, folks. All right, while we're waiting for Brandon to get back from the bathroom, I thought I'd take a second to thank today's sponsor for this episode. There's no sponsor. There is you. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of Appalachians that donate to Coalfield Development's mission, whether it's $5, $50, $500. It all is incredibly helpful, and if I'm speaking candidly, it's what got us through a lot of the federal funding challenges that we experienced last year. So I thought I'd take advantage of the moment where there's a short break here to say just thank you for those who have given to our mission, and thank you to future givers who may give to anything that provides hammers in our trainees' hands, boots on their feet, 2x4s for them to nail, tiles for them to roof. It all goes straight to the mission. So thank you. All right, back to the conversation. And we're back. The last thing I was asking was, what do you carry? you obviously can't be in this office space every day. So what do you carry from here? The good memories, the bad memories. How do you carry that with you into your work at a very different kind of office space, at higher ed, in a very beautiful historic building? How do you stay grounded with all of the very real, what I would call very gritty experiences here in a space that is very much collegiate and more established?
Yeah.
How do you balance this?
Well, I still have my EPA grant administration training certificate.
That's right. You got that in your office.
In
That's
my
right.
office. Brad became my business coach.
Brad Smith.
Brad Smith, President Smith, before he was my boss. And he became a supporter of Coalfield development. He believes in what the organization is doing on a deep, deep level as a born and raised Wayne County.
Yeah, that's right.
And really, my role at Marshall is not a role that existed before. It's economic and workforce development. It's really saying, how can the university lean into this external goal and say it's not just about students here on this campus, but it's about becoming a prosperity platform for the community, the state, the region, for all different types of people to benefit. And so his invitation was basically, I want you to take everything you've learned through Coalfield development. I want you to bring that to Marshall University. And higher ed is changing and the economy is changing. If we can't show up for people differently and better, then it's going to be tough to go another 200 years like we did the past 200 years.
That's fascinating because it's less of a how do you, Brandon, hold on to the real things in the world, and how does Marshall DI every tower and bring it
How do
the
we
real
really
world
reach
into
out
and out.
and partner.
Love that.
Yep.
Love that.
And so all the skill sets of problem solving and supporting
Yeah.
people and supporting more people and helping people overcome barriers.
Yeah.
We can't just somebody who's growing up with their grandparents because their parents passed away from an overdose and all the challenges that goes with that, to just plop them on this campus and say good luck.
Yeah.
That's not going to cut it.
One of the most scary things for me was going to higher ed. I was
Really?
first in my family, and it only happened after I got laid off as a lineman, Wow. I love working with my hands. I find it is just it fully activates everything, like your mind to problem solve, your body to actually build something, and I loved it. And the company shut down near Fairmont where I was working, and so on unemployment, trying to figure out what to do next, and saw a poster in my post office. It's almost like an Uncle Sam kind of poster saying, like, I want you. It's like this reciprocity agreement. Like, what is the word reciprocity? But it's basically saying this community college across the state line will pay in-state tuition if you want to come attend it. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll give that a try, and I'll do that while maybe I'm trying to find other lineman jobs. But I said there's no way I want to do it alone, and I can't do it because I don't have a high school diploma. Our school was so far away from where we grew up, the bus route couldn't reach us, and my dad had the only vehicle to take to the coal mines. And so we were homeschooled in a way that it's not like the fun, sexy, independence kind of model that folks think it is today. It was like, no, my mom had to agree to go try and sign up and sell 5 encyclopedia sets on the road, and she'd get the 6th one free, and she'd use that to teach us how to read. And that's how we literally learned. It was just reading encyclopedias. It was not our first choice of resources, but it worked, and we turned out as we turned out. But it always felt like I couldn't legitimize my experience because there wasn't a degree beside it. There wasn't a thing I could point to as a diploma. And so while I was a lineman, I would work 60 to 70-hour weeks, climbing telephone poles, sometimes 50 feet high, in terrible weather, and then come home and study for my GED. And over time, got it. I carry it with me every single day in my wallet. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of is this, and it's laminated and fallen to pieces now. it's one of the few things I have in my office as well.
Yeah.
And so that helped me feel like, okay, I can learn some things. I think I could tackle college, but I don't want to go it alone. And so talking with my brother Josiah, he's like, hey, we should do this together. And so we both studied the same things together in the same classes together, in the same degrees. Didn't really diversify too much, but we wanted to, control the controllables.
Yeah.
How do you
and have
reduce risk,
Yeah.
study from each other, lean on each other, because that's scary, man. That's scary to
big time.
do something like that for the first time in your family. And then to go, we thought, okay, associate's degree, awesome. Great. Now let's go back home. But there's a scholarship to get your bachelor's. And do you do that? And it's at a baby Ivy League institution. Oh my God. There's no way I'm that, intelligent. But we said, if we do it together, maybe this can work together. And it did, but it's just...
your brother was a support system, and vice versa.
In Appalachia, the family is the thing that I think makes you thrive or struggle. And sometimes the absence of a family can make you struggle. The presence of a family can make you struggle. It is an amplifier in many directions. And so, I think I'm really on my soapbox or my paint can now, because you're talking about how Marshall's really making sure that it's accessible and approachable, and it's not just saying like, hey, here's the bar, jump up and grab it. Instead, here's steps up to it.
That really is what it's called. Marshall for all, Marshall forever. That's our strategic plan. The idea is it really is for all. Yeah. Whatever background, whatever your parents did, whatever you might have done, this is a platform to learn and grow. Yeah. And the forever piece is changing higher ed to say, how can we be a place where you can come back to again and again over your lifetime to keep getting skills that you need. Everything's changing so fast. Yeah. 4 years when you're 18 years old isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal vision.
It really is. It's really exciting. Yeah. It's really exciting. Is the Ona Speedway the Outwayne of Cabell County?
I love the Ona Speedway. Have I talked to you about this before?
Maybe once or twice.
Oh, the Ona Speedway.
You wanted to have a Coalfield sponsorship on one of the race cars as a way to community
I couldn't
outreach.
get the team to buy in. I resent it to this day, and I haven't let the idea die. Coalfield will sponsor a race car one day. Somehow, I might personally underwrite it. It gets at, like, why would we want to change Appalachia? All right, do we want better jobs? Of course. Do we want better infrastructure? Of course. Do we want more prosperity for our people and places? Of course. Do we not want to have an Ona Speedway? Do we not want to be a place where you can fish and ride an ATV and hunt and can reconnect with nature? Do we not want to sleep under a quilt that our granny knit? Do we not want to eat food from vegetables that we grew out back? It's still a unique, distinctive place, and that does not need changed. That just needs to be enjoyed.
Ona Speedway, if you ever want to do a collab. It is a pretty... it and the 52 drag strip down here are two experiences everyone should experience.
And also just how smart our people are. We're not always the best well-spoken. Sure. We're certainly not the most PC. But the way, and I'm sure this is true other places too, but our folks tinker in the back garage and take different parts and pieces and put them together to make these beat up things go twice as fast as they're supposed to. I mean, it's just beautiful. I just love it. And there's just a brilliance in Appalachia that it's there. Just people don't understand it.
I love it. It gets classified as hillbilly ingenuity, and it's, take or leave it
Call
for
it
that
what
term.
you will.
Yeah. It's called brilliance. Yeah. Okay. What I mentioned that as sort of a segue to the question, what are your little comforts? What recharges you? Because you do operate, I would consider, on another level. I think there are folks who get a lot done, but you somehow find a way to really maximize every moment you have without just being focused on output. You're not a robot. You're a very empathetic human person. And so balancing the quality of output, but also retaining the empathy piece. What recharges that very, thinking about you as an owner, race car, what's the fuel in the tank for you? What keeps all that
How do I
moving?
make that next left turn?
That's right, yeah. What are your little comforts?
Well, I'll answer a couple different ways. I do have faith is a big part of who I am. I don't like to try and force that on anybody, but without a prayer life, I don't know that Coalfield Development would have survived those early lean days. I'm a journaler. I love words. I love to read. I love to write. I process a lot through journaling, less through talking it out and more through sort of some quiet time to pray and reflect and write it out.
You mentioned my favorite scripture of all time, Iron Sharpened Iron, Proverbs 27:17.
Yeah. I have several key, Micah 6:8, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. I mean, there's a few different pieces of scripture that really have gotten me through. I met my wife through Coalfield Development, one of our earliest site visits. Don't worry, she disclosed it. She had to step out of the boardroom, for that, in case it became a scandal. And now we have 2 boys who are a blast. And so I do my family, just time with my family. I'm pretty good about evenings, weekends, just let be what'll be. Even before I worked at Marshall, I love Marshall sports, especially football. It's not the biggest fan base in the world, but you'd be hard pressed to find a more passionate fan base. And part of it is it's more than just the game. It's a community experience to tailgate and wear the colors, and they represent a lot of the grit that we love about this place. I like whiskey too.
That was going to be on
being
here.
honest, yeah.
Jameson, right?
Yeah. No. Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace. All right.
And so I try not to overdo it, but
all right.
Sometimes by the end of the week, there's some things just don't replace a good.
That's right. Yeah.
A wee drab, as they would say. A wee dram.
That's right.
A wee dram, as they would say in Scotland.
All right. Opposite. What's a pet peeve? What demotivates you?
Ooh, that's a good one. That sent us the biggest surprise for me early in Coalfield, and I'll get to how this applies presently. I knew people outside the region looked down on us. I mean, part of where I realized that I was in this great Boy Scout troop growing up, and we'd always go to far away for scout trips because it was just fun adventure. And almost every summer, I went to Florida, Wisconsin, Illinois, New York, Georgia. And it'd say where I'm Brandon from West Virginia, and they would like make a joke or they would act sorry for me. Yeah. And they would act like it was totally fine to make a joke. Somehow it wasn't. Yeah. I still can't make sense of that, know. And
they told me I'm the reason it's called a toothbrush, not a teeth brush.
Shit like that. Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised you're wearing shoes.
I got that too at Bucknell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know how outsiders feel about Appalachia, and I have a chip on my shoulder about it. Can't help it. Part of the deal. Yeah. But realizing people who lived here starting to take a same attitude. So when that contractor told me, you're not going to find any young people who want to work, all that's left are pillbillies. And I heard other versions of that cynicism. That demoralized me. It's like, oh my gosh, so like we're giving up on ourselves now. Yeah. I was not expecting that. Because I was just raised to have this pride of place. Yep.
Oh man, you're going to get me down a rabbit hole with the word pride, because I do think that's similar to like the dogged hope sometimes, is that it's not a pride out of positive things that we're accomplishing. It's like a dogged pride out of like, if I don't, I'm accepting how much I hate myself and the world hates me, and I'm just what
I'm either going to be a part of something.
That's right.
Positive.
Well, screw you. So what? Like it's sort of like this.
That resonates.
I don't know, like FU pride in a way, and it's a survival mechanism, and I get it. I totally get it. That is.
And then in current days, so then if the negativity, if I sense that creeping into the team, it can be a trigger.
Sure.
And I'm sure sometimes it's an overly self-righteous thing, objectively. But we can disagree on what's the right decision. We can disagree on how to go about doing it. But, man, we better all believe in the work that we're doing and the direction that we're going. And really, those of us who get to work with organizations or universities, we're the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Like, we get to be the problem solvers.
Yeah.
We should be so energized and joyful every single day. And when that's not the case, I get I get a little I don't know what the word is. I get frustrated.
Yeah, frustrated. I call it like a righteous indignation sometimes, because I think we do have to reset or recalibrate because take it back to the context. The context is however frustrated I'm feeling about a grant that I spent maybe a couple hours writing does not deserve the amount of energy and frustration and anger from me about my mood when I know what that grant would be supporting or the people that are actually relying upon it. That's where my energy should be focused on. And so it makes sure we don't get so wrapped up in our own ego of like, well, I deserve to, feel amazing all the time. No, that's okay.
Not really.
Like,
not really owed that.
Yeah. Okay. You're probably the only person I know that out West Virginia's me in lineage. So I think you said you have 6 generations in West Virginia, which is fascinating to me, and I've always wanted to ask you because my lineage goes to 5, and the oldest one fought in the Civil War to make West Virginia a state.
Okay.
And so I'm curious if your lineage is going to West Virginia pre-West Virginia, but it's in Virginia.
So the first thing my dad has called me, I always get it wrong. I think in different interviews I've said 5, 6, and 7.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, you've raised a generation.
I like history,
too, though.
not math. Okay. So let me. If I think so, there's a
most
family,
improved though. Most improved.
There's a family cemetery in Braxton County on my dad's side where we gather, at least once a year and sort of hear the stories of these different ancestors. And there are Civil War veterans in that cemetery. So I'm pretty sure I'm 6th on my dad's side, and that it does actually predate West Virginia as a state, to your point. Yeah. On my mom's side in Virginia, but it's right near the edge of sort of Tidewater, I don't remember or Piedmont, I don't remember what they call their regions. It's not quite in Appalachia, but it's almost. And her grandparents were tenant farmers. I mean, just came, very, very little. They were tobacco farmers in Virginia. And they go back in Virginia, I believe it would be 8 generations. Wow. So as far as in Virginia and then later in West Virginia, it goes way back.
It does,
for sure.
That's cool. When I was doing the calculations, I had to measure mine in sort of like the alliterations of what we call our grandparents. So my dad, his grandchildren now call him Pawpaw. He called his dad Papaw Holly, and he called his dad Poppy. And it's just like this Pawpaw, Papaw, and Poppy. They're all 3 different people, and they have different fluctuations on the same name. So I'm trying to figure out what mine would be.
See what you're getting teared up for.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't even get to the question. What's fascinating to me with that deepness and heritage you have in West Virginia, because I resonate a lot with that, is you let it be a deep-rooted system in the state that makes a large trunk that sprouts wide branches to serve other states. You're not territorial with your care for Appalachians. It doesn't see state lines. And so how much do you pivot back and forth from West Virginia Brandon to Appalachian Brandon? And how much does whiskey help?
Back to whiskey. I've I've gotten much more over the course of my life. I've gone from more the West Virginia pride to like the Appalachian pride. I think if you drive across a state line, like we're in Wayne County, Kentucky's right over there. If there wasn't a sign saying "Welcome to Kentucky," you wouldn't really be able to tell you're in a different place. And I think I love Appalachian culture. Like I love who we are. I don't want to change this into something that we aren't. I think one area where we could improve, loosen up a little bit, is our territorialism, or what I would call politics. You know, we just lose time on the patient speed. We should not be surrendering speed for the sake of petty grievances or petty rivalries with like the other school across the way or the other county or the other political party. We just lose so much time. And so it's become much less for me about like what town are you from, or even like who's your daddy.
Right.
You know, like so many meetings start with who's your people.
Many,
and then we're eyeing them up. We're like, oh, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so he's probably not going to amount to much. Well, that's not really a fair way to start a situation out with a young person. So I do think one of the areas where we can continue to grow with our culture is just, you know, maybe more welcoming sometimes, or maybe less hung up on our rivalries.
And I think some of that stems from this scarcity mindset we're all born into. It's that, well, in order for me in Kentucky to care what happens in West Virginia across the border, I need to have an abundance of care and time and resources. And you know, the flooding that happened last year, you know, the flood came 3 feet of cresting that flood wall in Williamson. But everyone banded together with what they had to help provide relief.
Absolutely.
But I think that's, you know, that was the state of an emergency. What about every day where we can figure out how our 1 + 1 can equal 3 together, and all of this can have a bigger impact than what we could do separately. I think that's difficult. It's a privilege to think bigger because you have
that's true too.
the time and freedom to really problem solve without having to focus on solving the problem of bread on the table. And so it's a challenge that I think if we could somehow wrestle with it, everything else starts to fall into place. But it's challenging because it's sort of, well, you're also wrestling with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you can't just speed past that. It's not you can't just fast track to you know, the top of that delta. And
That's
so
not how that works.
It's not. So my patience for that is tested a lot at times. It's like, well, why don't you see the bigger picture with me? But it's like, well, I didn't see the bigger picture though when I was, you know, worried about if I'd flunk out of community college because I just now got my GED. You know, I didn't have time to think about that.
Yeah, it's easy now that we're a resource organization, right? It's easy to lecture somebody about, oh, just because you didn't get that grant doesn't mean you lost out. It's like, well, if I'm an organization with a small budget, I did lose out. Right. So it is good to get the judgment out. But at the end of the day, the mission only gets achieved when we overcome these rivalries.
And reach out to each other. Pull each other.
Brad does this with WVU.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Yeah.
Marshall's always there's a culture of compare and contrast and compete, and he's really tried to root that. He's one of WVU's biggest donors. Marshall grad, Marshall president, one of the biggest donors in the history of WVU. And you know, he shares this analogy that I have, which an old 4-H agent, Carl Markham here in Wayne County, shared with me. We were in a community meeting one time. It was not going well. People were scrapping over, you know, different pieces of what they wanted for their part of the county. And he said, folks, we're going to have to decide if we want to be geese or crabs. And it was a strange comment, sort of caught people's attention. And, you know, crabs in a barrel, if you've ever been to Maryland, you don't even have to put a lid on them because every time one tries to crawl out, another crab will pull it down. That's how crabs act. Geese, you know, when they're on the ground, are kind of crabby. You know, they spit at each other, they swat, flap, they smell, they're loud. But once they set their direction, they form a V. They're 70% more efficient in their V than they would be on their own. One goose gets tired or sick, 2 or 3 others drop back to help it regain its strength. And they go where they've decided to go. And so that's really, at the end of the day, resources are not, you know, infinite, but are we going to act like crabs or are we going to act like geese?
Love that. It's powerful. You end every podcast with two questions on the Change of the Coalfield podcast. I want to end this really great conversation with you with two questions back to you. The same two questions. In your lifetime, what have you seen change significantly in Appalachia? And the second question is, what still needs changed or should change in Appalachia?
You're turning it, flipping the tables.
Mm-hmm.
What have I seen change? What do I still want to see change?
Correct. In your lifetime.
When we started Coalfield development, this message of economic diversification was not nearly as far along. So, we were in the Coalfields of West Virginia, including Wayne, by the way. Coal mining was the largest private employer in Wayne County when we started. There were 3 active mines. By 2015, they'd all closed. And we had an unemployment crisis on our hands. And this was just right after the Great Recession, which we already had an unemployment crisis then. And so our response to that was to say, yeah, let's train people, but also let's make sure there's jobs actually available for people to be trained for. We took that 33-6-3 model and went from construction, deconstruction, into agriculture, into furniture making, helped incubate the first solar company in this part of the state, partnership with Solar Holler. And it tied back to our theory of change, which was if you've had a mono-extractive economy, then the way to improve that long term is you've got to have economic diversification. You've got to run experiments to see what can work. And some things are going to work better than other things. And at that time, a solar company or a green construction company was viewed as like anti-coal. And we weren't anti-coal. Yeah. We were pro-economic diversification. Yeah. But the messaging was so politicized, back to this weight around our neck of politics in Appalachia, that everything got politicized to the point if you were creating a job in something other than coal, then you were being anti-coal. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this really shift over time to say, no, actually, we really do need to have a diversified economy in the southern part of the state. That can look a lot of different ways. That's going to involve multiple different industries. But I really have seen a shift to sort of all the above, advanced energy, and really an agreement on the need for economic diversification in Central Appalachia.
I think before you answer the second part on what still needs to change, I come from 3 generations of coal miners in Mingo County. Very proud of our legacy as energy producers for the nation, powering us through the Industrial Revolution and 2 world wars, building our communities. And also, my dad was the biggest advocate of find a better job. It's not worth it to break. He's 6'6" Marine. Like, don't break your back in the mines. Do something more. There's more options because this is fading as an industry. There's not going to be a future for it. And so I think there's a way we can honor the miner and the sacrifice while also saying what are the options, the tools we want in our toolkit. Because we don't just want a toolbox, a big old metal toolbox with just one wrench in it. You want multiple tools in there. And the thing that always frustrated me is that some of those tools are easily handed in that toolbox with no issue. And some of them get a lot of politicization that comes with them, and I think going back to do we do policy or do we do proof? There's a solar array on the roof right across from us right now. And I think we could have easily said, well, to diversify means we need to build up all of this political ecosystems and infrastructure and policies before we bring in a developer of solar. But I think that would have just been contributing to the politicization before proving the concept that, here's a company in Huntington hiring local to install solar to lower your energy bill. Yep. And it's not going to replace all the coal jobs lost. It's not a silver bullet.
People to do it.
It's exactly. But we're not pretending it's going to be the savior, and nor should anything be. There's not a silver bullet, it's a silver buckshot of multiple different industries. But it always frustrates me how Marcellus Shale gas gets a pass. Because solar, the narrative I always grew up with was every solar panel installed is a coal miner job lost. But really the biggest competitor to coal is gas. Every barrel of oil mined is a coal miner job, lost more comparison to that analogy. So it's always bothered me.
Interesting point.
The politics of it, which gives me hope then ultimately that it is just that. It's just politics. That, okay, all right, well then there's not really much behind this. It's just conversation then at that point. And so let's have a conversation. And again, I'm not here to proselytize it. I'm not here to say it is this savior, but is it a tool that you want to have?
A solution.
You deserve to have every tool in your toolbox. Yeah. Whether you use it every day, totally up to you. But I think we deserve abundance, not scarcity.
Solutions.
That's right.
Not solution.
Yeah.
And your point about proselytization is important. I mean, very few people like to be told what to do or how to think.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that has that as a pastime.
Yeah.
And so I think in the nonprofit world, the trap sometimes is self-righteousness.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we just have to really be on guard against it.
Agreed. So what's one thing that you would want to see change that we still got to work on? We mentioned a couple of them. Yeah. Self-righteousness, one of them. We've diversified the economy. Ish.
Come a long way.
Yeah.
In doing so, I think two things. One, I'd like to see nonprofits more respected, appreciated, and invested in as solution drivers for our region. I think a lot of times, the private sector is massive. It's always most powerful in the U.S. throughout our history. Government is also not as financially big as private sector, but very powerful and has the powers of the purse strings sometimes. And the nonprofit sector is smaller, but it's where some of the most incredible innovation comes out of. And it's the segment of society when the other two have given up on somebody or some place. It's the nonprofit sector that finds a way to believe in that person in that place and help them plug back in again.
Love that.
And I just think that's underappreciated. But I will say, I think sometimes in nonprofits, we let that be a crutch. It's like, well, I'm just a little nonprofit. Like I can't do that. I can't change much. I can't take that risk.
Yeah.
Because we're just a little nonprofit. It becomes a crutch.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that continue to change to where we're proud to be social innovators, to be solutionists.
Yeah.
And we own that and we think bigger than we ever have before.
No better way to end the conversation. Brandon, thank you so much for just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and just years of service. Going back to, what we say, like 2010?
2010 was the start
now
of it.
2026. It's amazing what you've accomplished and continue to do. And hopefully, folks listening to this in a year that is challenging, they hear the dogged hope. And I think that's what I've enjoyed talking about today with you. Anything that I missed or didn't hit on that you'd like to hit on?
No, I think I like the dogged hope. It's a good message.
Cool.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jacob.
you.
Thank you for your leadership. And I'll say this. Of everything I've put into the organization, I think some of the deepest joy really has come through this transition. I think the trust that we have in one another, I think just admiration for you as a leader in a difficult time, and the joy of, you talk about a tree. I mean, it really, the organization really is so much bigger than any one individual, including me or even including you now. But it didn't get that way overnight.
Yeah.
And seeing you steward and shepherd has been a real joy.
Joy is the right word. It's been a blast. And it, I think I remind myself a lot from, I brought, my old notepad with me because you've been a mentor to me and given me a lot of leadership support and guidance. And there's probably 30 different one-liners, Brandonisms in here that have just really guided me. And consistency is key. learn how to say no, sometimes yes, maintain trust in relationships with the ground level. All of these ways to make sure that as I'm having my head up here in these big esoteric clouds and conversations and, the big tree, how do I make sure that I just enjoy being in a tree? I love climbing trees, and I love just the nature of it. The thing I love about Appalachia is it's the most biodiverse region. That I think it's the second most biodiverse region in the world, according to the Nature Conservancy. But if you're doing this work and you can't find the joy, then the people feel it, the trainees feel it, the communities feel it, and then you start to what I would never. The only thing that would make me stop doing this work is if it feels like I'm then contributing to that pessimism that you talked about, sort of like the fatalism, like, oh well, I guess we can't find a way, and it just there's never not seemed like a way. I've never always had the answer. I've never pretended to know how to navigate it all, but I do know that there's always a way. Yeah. And maybe that's part of the dogged hope too. But I think in trying to navigate and find that way, you can do that with a little bit of anxiety, which is okay. You can do that with a little bit of confidence. That's okay. But the thing that makes it fun is the joy of it. Finding the joy and making sure you're, finding the silliness of it too. That we're sitting on paint cans in an empty room with no lighting, and that's okay. It's a little silly, and I like that. That kind of stuff brings me joy. For sure. And the trust and relationships here, the mentorship, brings me a lot of joy and hope. And it's just, I think, seeing what you do at Marshall. I think when I first heard about your transition, when you started to talk about, not completely leaving Coalfields to having the role you have now, but spending a lot of time at Marshall, my immediate reaction was a gut drop, just a big gut drop, because I think my joy and my hope was tied to you as a person. It's like, oh shoot, there goes the core of the joy there, because if Brandon's still chugging along, we can all chug along, and you are still chugging along, but in bigger systems. Yeah, well, you're bringing all of it together, and I think that's why I feel almost like a little uncomfortable when folks say like, Jacob, this gives us hope. No,
hope's deeper than
all of the. Yeah, you're giving me hope. The trainee who just got the driver's license is giving me hope. Like that's where, if you want to know where I get my hope from, it's these things. And so I'm meandering now at this point, but I guess I just want to say that I really appreciate. I know the joy I have in this role, and you are taking on a whole new challenge and opportunity with this. I want to say new, but you've been in it 2 years.
Coming up on 3.
Coming up 3 years, yeah, same here.
Incredible.
Too. Yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Very
First year in my role was one of our biggest years ever. Second year, one of our hardest years ever.
Not real.
This third year, let's make it a combination of both, hard and good at the same time.
Deep joy.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate you.
Yep.